It's unfortunate that there wasn't more support for the PlayStation Vita. We could have gotten so many more awesome games, as well as ports of existing games too. And I'm sorry to say, but remote play does not count. I'm talking about actual games released specifically for the PlayStation Vita. Now, the list of titles you're about to see are games I feel should have gotten a PS Vita port. They would have helped diversify the PS Vita library tremendously, in my opinion. Let's go over the criteria for how these games were chosen. First, they must already exist on a previous platform, and they must, theoretically, be able to run on PS Vita hardware. Here's my top 10 games that should be ported to the PS Vita. Number 10. RAIDEN 4. You know, it's been a while since I played one of these bullet hell shooters. I'm kinda in the mood for one. And what better place to start than on the PlayStation Vita? There aren't a lot of these type of games released today, and I can probably think of maybe one other similar title on the PS Vita. RAIDEN has always been one of my favorite arcade games growing up as a kid. Why? Because it was always a quarter to play, while most other games were asking for 50 cents to $1. At least that's how it was at my local arcades back in the day. It was always so much fun, regardless of whether you were the one at the controls or just simply spectating. Challenging for those experienced with the mechanics, yet simple and easy to pick up for a novice. You didn't need to know any combos or anything. There were just 2 buttons you had to worry about: fire and bomb. That's it. It was the first game I ever watched my brother play and actually be pretty decent at. He's not a gamer, by the way, but watching him do well gave me a happy moment for some reason. A game like this would play and look so well on the PS Vita's OLED screen. Hey Sony, make it happen. Number 9. Strider. I can totally see this game being released on the PlayStation Vita. It's the type of game that's graphically intense, but at the same time doesn't seem so demanding that a handheld port would be out of the question. As I'm playing, I can't help but be reminded of Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 on the PlayStation Vita. I mean, aside from a different color palette, the 2 games share a strikingly similar art style, both opting for less realism and more towards a cel-shaded look. There's also not much happening within the background either, so I feel the game should be able to stick to a solid 30 frames a second, which is what the PS3 version was basically running on. It might not be groundbreaking, but Strider would have fit in so perfectly with the other 2D action games on PS Vita. It's fast, it's pretty, and boy is it tough. Listen, this game does not mess around. It's like, I don't know, modern 2D Ninja Gaiden. Some enemies can be a little frustrating, but man, is it so satisfying when you make it out alive by the skin of your teeth. Fans of old school hack and slash action platformers should definitely check out Strider. It might not be available on the PS Vita, but it's on virtually almost every other system. Give it a try. Number 8. Mighty Number 9. Oh geez, I can just see all the angry comments coming my way. I know there's a crap ton of controversy surrounding this game. I know about the Kickstarter fiasco and all the countless delays. Trust me, I had to cancel my reserve on the PS4 because I never thought the game was going to be released. But hear me out. I want to play this game, only because I want to do a review on it. But the thing is, I want to review it on the PlayStation Vita because I know people will be interested in that video. I tried out the demo for a little bit, and from what I played, I honestly didn't think it was so bad. I mean, it wasn't anything revolutionary, but at the same time, let's be honest, it wasn't terrible. Granted, I only played the demo, which included just the first stage, so my opinion might change if I were to play the entire game. Also, I didn't back the Kickstarter initially, so maybe I didn't feel as cheated as some of the other gamers. There was actually a planned Vita port that would have came out with the PS4 version, but that probably isn't ever going to happen at this point. Which leads me to the assumption that this game is possible on the Vita. Let me know, is this game really that bad? And does it deserve a Vita port? Number 7. Tekken Tag Tournament HD. I started playing Tekken back in '96 when the sequel was released on the first PlayStation. I liked the game, but I wasn't really a diehard fan yet. It wasn't until Tekken Tag Tournament was announced for the PlayStation 2 did I start to take notice. I saw screenshots of the game in a magazine and just couldn't believe my eyes. There were individual blades of grass on Eddie Gordo's stage. This alone gave me enough reason to put down a pre-order for a PlayStation 2 that coming year. I remember it like it was yesterday. My PS2 console was paid off months in advance. I even bought a copy of Tekken Tag Tournament a day ahead of the PS2 launch, just because I couldn't wait to play it. I remember putting in hours and hours of this game with my friend Ben. I'd ride my bike over to his house with my copy of Tekken Tag Tournament, and we would play non-stop. It was so much fun. We just couldn't stop laughing, telling jokes as we played each match. I have to say, it was one of the best times I had as a kid. I would love to relive those memories. If Namco can get the entirety of Tekken DR and Tekken 6 ported over to the PSP, then there should be absolutely no reason why Tekken Tag Tournament couldn't be brought over to the PS Vita. Number 6. MotorStorm Pacific Rift. Clearly the most ambitious title to be ported to the PS Vita if it ever were to happen. The only reason I feel it would be possible is because of how MotorStorm Arctic Edge turned out on the PSP. I'm well aware a tremendous amount of detail would have to be cut, but for some odd reason, I still think it would come out looking rather well. Because it's a racing game, a lot of the lower res textures won't be too noticeable, since you'll be moving so fast most of the time. Add in a blur effect, and I feel you could hide a lot of the graphical downgrade. MotorStorm Pacific Rift came out at a time when developers were just starting to get a handle on the cell processor of the PlayStation 3. And it shows. Just take a look at this. This is what the first MotorStorm should have looked like. My biggest concern with this port would be toning down some of the environmental effects, most notable the water. I can't really recall a similar game on the PS Vita that dealt with water in the same way, so it would be interesting to see how the hardware handles such a task. Of course, a lot of the trees and foliage is going to have to be pared back as well. Still, seeing how Pacific Rift looked on the PS3, if the developers can get the Vita version to look half as pretty, then that's good enough for me. Number 5. Resident Evil HD Remaster. For people who have never played a Resident Evil game and are thinking about getting into the franchise, start with this one. With a more modern control scheme, gone are the slow and clunky tank controls found previously on the GameCube. The visuals have also been given a complete overhaul compared to the original on PS1. Resident Evil HD Remaster looks good even when stacked up against games released today. Being a huge fan of the series, I would absolutely love to see this game given the PS Vita treatment. We really need a good Resident Evil title on Sony's handheld, because the port of Revelations 2 did not cut it. Let me tell you, I got so emotional when capturing footage for this game. When I entered that save room and that music started to play, oh my god, I was done. Other than reducing some of the textures to fit on the cartridge, I can't picture too many cutbacks that would have to be made with this conversion. Most of the game is pretty dark, so I don't think the low-res textures will be too noticeable either. Number 4. Shenmue. With the impending release of Shenmue 3, what better way to catch up on the legendary saga than replaying the game that started it all? A game that was meant to take down the PlayStation 2 and bring back Sega to its early days of video game dominance. Too bad it didn't turn out that way. But hey, you live and you learn. Shenmue 1 and 2 are both getting an HD remaster on the Xbox One and PS4. So why can't PS Vita get one too? I mean, at least give us the first one. The game might not have been a commercial success on the Dreamcast, but I'm pretty sure people are well aware of its impact by now. I think this would be the perfect opportunity to get up to speed with the Shenmue franchise before the third game is released. I'm currently playing this again on my Dreamcast, and aside from a few wonky control issues, it's still amazing. Number 3. Shadow of the Colossus HD Remaster. I mean, why not? It's been released for almost every Sony console up to this point. You'd figure it wouldn't hurt to have a Vita version. This is probably one of my all-time favorite games. If you have yet to experience Shadow of the Colossus, then you need to do so quickly. I'm still amazed at some of the boss encounters in this game. My favorite has to be the 5th one, where you have to jump onto its wing as it swoops down at you. There's just something about being that high up in the sky and seeing the lake way down below you. It's so freaking epic. Some mechanics don't work as well now as they did back then, in my opinion. For example, climbing and jumping feel a little too loose for my taste, but hey, at least it still works. I recently played the remake on PS4, and let me tell you, it looks phenomenal. Almost everything has been redone, but of course I don't think the remake would be possible on the Vita. I do, however, think the HD remaster that was released on the PS3 is completely plausible. So much work and revision has been done on this game, I feel like there should be enough experience to port this title over to the PS Vita. With the knowledge gained from the HD remaster and the recently released remake, the developers should be able to port this to the Vita in their sleep by now. Of course, I'm not a game developer, so what do I know? But man, can you imagine playing this game in bed? Or better yet, while sitting on the can? And no, remote play does not count. Number 2. Devil May Cry HD Collection. Now this one is a little tricky. Not because I don't think the conversion is possible, but whether Capcom can actually fit all 3 games on one cartridge. You know what's probably going to happen if they ever decide to go ahead with this. The first 2 games will end up on one cartridge, with the third being digital only. Of course it's not impossible. I mean, take a look at the Jack collection. The developers managed to get all 3 games on one card. But then again, we all know how that turned out. It's kind of weird going back and replaying this game again. The last time I played the first Devil May Cry was back in 2001. That seems like eons ago. But for some strange reason, everything seems so familiar. For example, I remember that window in the beginning of the game. The one you see right before going up the first flight of stairs. Through the bars, you can see some kind of tree swaying in the wind. That image always stuck with me. I always thought it looked kind of creepy. You know what? If Capcom ever decided to leave out a game, they can just leave out the second Devil May Cry and keep the first and third games on the cartridge. Oh man, I really did not care much for the sequel. Yo, why the hell did they pull the camera so far back in that game? Number 1. Kingdom Hearts HD 1.5 Remix. Whoever came up with this concept is a genius. You would think something like this would end up being a disaster, but luckily for Square Enix, this has to be one of the best ideas they ever come up with. Who would have known mixing Final Fantasy and Disney characters would turn out so well? Is it the art style? Is it the gameplay? Maybe it's the soundtrack. I don't know. I just know there's something about this game that works. I think if you can't afford to go to Disney World, this is probably the next best thing. Each of the Disney franchises recreated so faithfully you'd think it was part of the actual movie. All the characters move and sound authentic. Aside from a few control tweaks concerning button shortcuts and enemy targeting, I don't think a conversion to the PlayStation Vita would be out of the question. The art style is simple enough where I don't think there'd be much loss regarding texture detail. I also don't think the size of the game would be a problem to get on the Vita cartridge either. I mean, there isn't really much pre-rendered cutscenes. Most of what you see will be in-game. My only concern are frame rate drops in some of the more open areas. I also think the amount of enemies appearing on screen at a time might have to be scaled back a little, as well as some tweaks to the particle effects. But other than that, I can't see how this port would be impossible. I mean, if Square Enix could get Final Fantasy X HD Remaster on the PS Vita, then why not Kingdom Hearts? Alright guys, I hope you like my list of games I think deserves a port on the PS Vita. Let me know what games you'd like to see on Sony's portable handheld. Please do leave any angry comments below. Just kidding. You guys are always so nice. Later.